Check, check. Am I on? Two politicians on time. Can you believe that? I'm Greg Stanton, Congress member. I'm lucky enough to represent Mesa in the United States Congress, and I am so happy to be here for this wonderful town hall with my friend, our friend, the Attorney General, Kris. Thanks for coming. We are tight. There's a lot of people in here. Are we in violation of the fire code? Are we okay? I'm not the mayor, so what do I care? I'm glad to have a big crowd here. That's awesome. In all seriousness, to the great folks of the Dobson Community Center who allowed us to have this event here today, are working overtime, Steve and the team, say thank you. And then if you do get, we're here for 2 hours at least. I don't know how late they're going to keep this place open. We're here for the duration, but I think we have coffee and drinks and even a few cookies over there if you need that as well. Another friend of ours just walked in the room, Senator Lauren Kuby, who represents the Tempe area and the legislature. Thanks for fighting the good fight. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to the Attorney General in just a second here. She's going to give a few opening remarks, and I will give a few opening remarks, but then it's your show. This is an open town hall. This is the best of America to have events like this so we can hear directly from you, concerns that you have, thoughts that you have. I'm sure we're going to hear a variety of opinions because we're Americans and we have free speech in this great country, and that's what today is all about. So after we give our open remarks, I think the members of the Attorney General's team, Sophia, where is she? Back in the back. And then we've got Chelsea from my team and Melissa from my team who will be going around. And people who have questions, make sure you find one of them and raise your hand, and they'll try to get you the mic. So let's get this party started right now. Someone who I have known for a long period of time, going back when I was on City Council, and she worked for Governor Napolitano, former Attorney General Napolitano. She and I worked in public service for many, many years together. I'm so proud of the work that she is doing as Attorney General, and obviously the work that she is doing to defend our democracy now is more important now than ever. So without further ado, our Attorney General, Kris.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's give it up for Greg Stanton. Isn't he awesome? Wow, Mesa, Arizona, you guys look awesome. Thank you so much for coming out. Oh my goodness, this is a fantastic turnout. It is good to be here. I just came from a press conference with Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, in which we announced my 9th lawsuit against the Trump administration. And we'll talk a little bit about those lawsuits, but as Greg said, this really is about you tonight and hearing from you. But, you know, as Arizona's chief legal and law enforcement officer, it is my job to protect this state and to defend our Constitution. And over the past month, as you know, as I said, my office, along with all Democratic attorneys generals across the country, have filed a series of lawsuits against the Trump administration. And, you know, we did so to protect our democracy, to protect our residents, to protect our country. And I believe in my heart and in my soul that we have never lived in more dangerous times, at least since the Civil War. And it's hard to say those words, but I truly believe it. And I also believe, and again, these are strong words and I understand that, but I believe that we are in the middle of a coup, an attempted coup on our country. And I believe that because I have filed 9 lawsuits, and on several occasions the Trump administration and Elon Musk, the unelected billionaire, has attempted to defy federal court orders that we won in those cases. And to me, that is an attempted coup on our democracy. So we are working hard in our office, and this is about protecting our state, and this is about preventing things like slashing jobs, gutting essential services, leaving communities scrambling to pick up the pieces. None of that is what they claim it to be, efficiency. None of that is efficiency. It's destruction. That's what it is. True efficiency comes from careful planning, collaboration, and respect for the law, not from haphazard cuts and mass firings abruptly destroying lives. Pure and simple. The impacts to our entire state, especially rural Arizona, many of you know I was born and raised in rural Arizona. I was born in Prescott, are huge. And so the stakes are so incredibly high. And I'll tell you this, we have had heartbreaking emails and phone calls pouring into my office over the past several months at our town halls in Phoenix and Tucson. Hundreds, and now Mesa, hundreds of people have come out to share their stories. We heard from veterans, educators, and community leaders who are deeply concerned about how these terminations and funding freezes will disrupt families. And we've had town halls in other states now. So we started with a town hall in Phoenix at Central High School, where 3 of my Democratic colleagues came down from Minnesota, from Oregon, and then we went up to Minneapolis, and we had a town hall there where 1,200 people turned out on a very cold night. Well, it was cold for me, at least. Just like you, to tell their stories. And there were a lot of really gut-wrenching stories. So all of the folks who've turned out are deeply, deeply concerned. What is going on right now is reckless, it is chaotic, and it is illegal. And it is. And we are hearing daily examples of indiscriminate firings and the destructive purging of federal health and safety services. Again, that is why I'm fighting in court to stop Trump and Musk's illegal power grab and unconstitutional attempts to steal from all of you. And then I do want to put up a slide. I don't know if we can do that. That shows, I don't know, can we move that slide, Delaney? Shows, obviously these are some of the headlines coming off of what's going on, and then we'll show a slide of the lawsuits. I want to end by saying this, and then allow the congressman to say a few words. I personally feel, so these are all of the lawsuits so far. By tomorrow night there will be a 10th, and I won't. So, all of these are important. In 8 out of 9 of these lawsuits that the Democratic AGs have filed, we have won what is called a temporary restraining order, a TRO. That is hard to do. That is not easy to do. For the lawyers in the room, that is really difficult. And what it means is a judge is saying that it's highly likely we are going to succeed on the merits of these cases. And it is a federal judge putting an immediate stop and halt to what Trump is doing. So you see, the first one was the birthright citizenship lawsuit. It took a Reagan-appointed judge, a 92-year-old Reagan-appointed judge, 25 minutes to declare that unconstitutional. 25 minutes. And then another of the, I think I don't know. I don't know how to determine which of these is most important. But the federal funding freeze was horrific. Going to be horrific for our states, for Congressman Stanton's district, for this district, for entire state. And this is the one where they were going to freeze funding for Head Start, for Meals on Wheels, literally. They were freezing funding for Meals on Wheels. They wanted to freeze funding. They had at one point shut down for 24 hours. They had shut down the Medicaid portal. For 24 hours, they did that until we got it unfrozen, unshut down. And then they also were, in that funding freeze, they would have shut down funding for what's called HIDTA, the High Impact Drug Trafficking area. And that is actually how we combat the Mexican drug cartels and the fentanyl crisis. They were going to shut down funding for that, which is insane because that's what Trump claims to care about. So we got a TRO in that case. Also in the NIH cuts case, that's the one that would have been so impactful to ASU and U of A and NAU. Of course, there's the Doge cases that we have. We were successful in kicking Elon Musk out of the Treasury Department. And we're working on trying to get him kicked out of all of the other agencies in our appointments clause case, in which we believe that Elon Musk is obviously violating the appointments clause of the Constitution. And then we have the federal. Okay, so the federal workers, the firings of all of the probationary employees. I shouldn't even say that word because it's not just probationary employees. They were firing also people in our federal agencies who had just been sort of moved to a different position or who had actually been promoted to a different position. That was 25,000 federal employees, including people like our hotshot crews who fires in northern Arizona. We had hotshot crews who were fired right before fire season, and we got that stopped, and a judge has now ordered the president to rehire all 25,000 of those people. And then, of course, there's the case. One of the more recent cases is our lawsuit against Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who. I don't even know what to say about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But this is an incredibly important case in which they were cutting grant funding, a massive amount of grant funding to our states, including Arizona. About $230 million we would have lost, or we will lose if I don't win this case, and including things for vaccinations, nurses in rural health clinics. A surveillance system that we were about midway through. DHS is midway through building to try to get us ready for the next pandemic. They were trying to shut that down. And then, of course, today we sued the Trump administration. They're attempting to essentially take over the state's elections systems. Very dangerous, very dangerous. So that's sort of a rundown of what we're doing. I just want to say this. I appreciate all your support. My office appreciates your support, and I appreciate you coming out tonight, because in my mind, this is about the effort to fight this attack on our country is about three things right now. It's about crowds. Got that covered. It's about courts. I'm trying to have that covered. And it's about courage. And if we all do that, if we all do that, they can't stop us. They can't stop us. And we will win in the end. So, So, thank you again for coming out. I truly believe, sometimes before we file one of these lawsuits, I think about past generations and what they would be thinking about this today. And I truly believe that past generations are speaking to us across the ages. They are speaking to us across time and space and across the ages. And they are saying to us, fight for our country. Now is your time. This is our time to stand up for our country and to deliver for this country and to save this country. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, A.G. Mays. Those lawsuits right there, we need her to be successful on every single one. They are a part of over 150 lawsuits that have been filed across this country, challenging the overreach by this administration, going beyond the legal authority of the President of the United States. Congress, the House Democrats have formed a litigation task force. We're in the game with you, backing you up in as many of those lawsuits as possible. In virtually every court decision thus far challenging the overreach of this president, the courts have stood firm and said that this president has overreached. And as the Attorney General said, now the challenge is actually making sure that we fully enforce those orders. Otherwise, we're in a constitutional crisis in the United States of America. And if this president thinks that the United States of America is going to move kind of by flooding the zone with all of these illegal acts, falling comfortably numb into authoritarianism, he's got another thing coming. We are not going to allow that to occur in the United States of America. These tariffs, the largest tax increase in American history, illegal. And here's the reason why it's illegal. Falsely claiming there's a national emergency. Read the Constitution. Tariffs have to be done by Congress. Article 1 of the Constitution. That's why the bill I'm leading on, we'll be filing on Monday, will go before Congress to undo that national order and force every single member of Congress to go on record about whether or not you support the largest tax increase in American history. Let's follow the Constitution. First thing this president did was issue an executive order blocking infrastructure investment. Infrastructure investment that was made under the bipartisan infrastructure law, one of the great bipartisan achievements of the last Congress. Over 148 Republicans voted for that budget. Budget done in a bipartisan way, signed by the president. Under the American system, the president's authority to follow the order of those appropriations, it ain't optional. It's the law, and he's got to follow those appropriations. So his idea that he could somehow take that action and it's optional for him to spend that money or not spend the money as he looks for clues of the so-called Green New Deal or something else. It ain't optional, and that's one of the most important lawsuits that the Attorney General and Attorneys Generals across this country have filed. I have to give a shout out too, because in addition to the great work that the Attorneys General are doing, there are some incredible nonprofits like Democracy Forward and the ACLU who are doing incredible legal work to defend our protections. But that's called impoundment, and impoundment is not allowed under the United States Constitution. And so the tariffs are illegal under our constitutional system. Impoundment, meaning appropriated actions taken by Congress, voted on, signed by the president, that is not optional. You have to spend those resources. Firing employees who are covered by collective bargaining is illegal in the United States of America. And so are employees covered by civil service protections. You can't just unilaterally fire people in the mass way that's being done. By the way, people that are providing incredibly important services to the people of the United States of America. and trying to eliminate departments like the U.S. Department of Education. That was created by Congress. That is not only bad for our kids, it is illegal. And of course, as the Attorney General and the Secretary of State just announced today, trying to take over American elections, that ain't legal. And so we need you to be successful in that lawsuit, because the state of Arizona determines elections. And that's on top of what they're trying to do through the United States Congress. As you know, as you've been following, their budget resolution would have $4.5 trillion of tax cuts for the largest corporations and wealthiest Americans. They're going to try to, quote unquote, balance it out by $1.5 trillion of cuts to programs. There, by the way, even that, do the math. That's still $3 trillion of a massive addition to the national debt. But even in that $1.5 trillion, most of that's been assigned to what's called the Energy and Commerce Committee, and they're saying if they're going to protect Social Security and Medicare, take them at their word, they're going to do that. Well, that leaves a massive target on the Medicaid program, which would leave hundreds of thousands of Arizonans without access to health insurance, to see the primary care, and it would be devastating. By the way, it's totally self-defeating, because if they're not getting care from a primary care physician, you know where they're going. They're going to the emergency rooms, which is the most expensive form. So it actually doesn't even serve the purpose of saving the money that they think they are saving. But that budget proposal is what is going through Congress right now. They don't want to even deal with the reality of their budget proposal, because they're trying to suggest that the massive tax cuts don't even, when they're going through what's called reconciliation, which is a way to get around the 60-vote requirement or the filibuster, the only way to do that is to pretend like the massive tax cuts don't have an impact on our budget. If they actually accounted for it properly, there's no way they could go through this with the reconciliation process, and that blows up the filibuster forever in the United States of America. It is bad news what is happening with the budget process right now through the United States Congress. So that's less of a legal issue, more of a political fight on the House floor. But there is some hope, because just this week, I was kidding with the Attorney General earlier. I thought we're supposed to be voting today, and I was worried about catching a flight to be here on time for this very event. But I got to go home early this week, and I'll tell you exactly why. There was a proposal to allow new parents in Congress, members of Congress, to be able to vote by proxy during the time, there are 12 weeks after you have a new baby. Pretty common sense idea. You should not be, the folks you represent should be disenfranchised just because you happen to be a member of Congress that has a child. Hugely popular idea among the American people. Well, the Speaker of the House didn't like the idea, so he tried to do a procedural trick to not even allow a vote on that process. Well, I'm telling you something right now. 7 courageous Republicans stood up to the Speaker, voted with the Democrats not to allow that to occur. It embarrassed the Speaker. The Speaker did what, I guess he decided to take his toys and go home, and instead of calling it a loss and moving on with other things, he sent us all home for the week. Now, the reason why that should give us some hope is because the Attorney General talked about the need for that last C, courage. In the House of Representatives, now, those of, again, this is a bipartisan audience, but those of us who agree with what my version of the world, what should happen on the House floor, we only need 3 courageous Republicans to come over, and if they do, we can block these massive Medicaid cuts that are going to cost over 500,000 Arizonans to take them off the Medicare roll. 3 courageous Republicans to come over, and we will not dismantle the Department of Education as the Attorney General is fighting so hard in court to protect. On policy after policy, we can actually reestablish checks and balances in the United States government, because that's not a partisan thing. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. This is a president who is trying to be an authoritarian leader and act without regard to if you're a Republican member of Congress, stand up for yourself. Fight for your power as a member of the United States Congress. Do the right thing. That's what needs to happen. All right. Now we're going to begin the part that you talk to us and tell us what you are thinking. So I think we've got the teammates from both of our offices who are going to go around the crowd and ask questions, and then either the Attorney General or I, or maybe both, depending on the issue, will have answers. But once again, before we begin, thank you, A.G. Mays, for what you're doing. It is very much appreciated and really needed.
Friends, I have the microphone. I'll come up to you. If we could be respectful of how many people are in this room and keep our comments as short as we can. If you have a longer comment written down that you want to give me, I'll happily take it from you. So if we could just start raising our hands and I'll start coming around, okay? I'm going to start over here. I'll work my way. I'll hold the mic for you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Bunny Davis. I'm registered as Ruth Davis, but I'm Bunny Davis, and I'm one of 3 newly elected governing board members to the Kyrene Elementary School District Governing Board. Thank you. Our school district covers a large chunk of LD 12. I'm here in my personal capacity. I'm in no way representing the governing board. It's just me. As a former elementary school teacher, adjunct instructor teaching school law for Northern Arizona University, master's and doctoral level students in Tucson, and former in-house attorney for Tucson Unified School District for a lot of years, I am well aware that public education for all of Arizona's children is the primary responsibility of our state government. In fact, it is our state's constitution that has a provision for public education under laws to be developed by our state government. There is no provision for public education in the U.S. Constitution, and that's a fact. However, even though there are not specific U.S. constitutional responsibilities for public education, Arizona, like every other state, is part of the United States of America. And so it has the legal duty to adhere to other federal laws that are in the U.S. Constitution. I've been distressed by what I have historically seen as some of our federal representatives' unwillingness to wade into the choppy waters of Arizona's public education system's legal functioning because of, I have heard some say, public education is not a federal issue. I am here to remind you, as I'm sure you're actually aware, that both the 14th Amendment civil rights provisions as well as the First Amendment do apply to Arizona public education system. I hope that you both can continue to help us focus on and improve our Arizona public education system by ensuring that all of our kids are protected and nurtured so that they may become successful and constructive members of our society. To do this, they must have the funding necessary for them to access free, adequate, quality education. Please help us to arrive at a place in this wonderful state where instead of being last in the nation in spending on individual students, we become a beacon of hope and investment in our kids' futures and for the future of our state and our nation. And thank you both for your service and your work.
Thank you, Bunny. Thank you, Bunny. Totally agree, and that's one of the reasons that I filed that lawsuit against the Trump administration on the DOE, their attempt to obliterate the Department of Education. That would be devastating to our Title I funds. It would be devastating to our ability to provide services for children with autism and children with special needs, IDEA, all of that. And so thank you for that. I completely agree with you on that. And as your Attorney General, I will fight for that both at the state and federal level. So thank you.
And let me just add to it. The federal government is at its best when it is partnering with state and local, and including our school districts, fighting for our kids. So as the Attorney General mentioned, Title I, helping our children in the lowest income neighborhoods to have that best shot, because a public education is the great equalizer in the United States of America. So Title I resources, special education resources. That's personal to me because my little sister, Maria, bless her soul, is now 30 years special education teacher in the Cartwright School District in the Maryville, 30 plus years. But you know what else the Department of Education supports? Pell Grants, which is the #1 program allowing first in their family students, often from lower income families, to be able to access higher education in the United States of America. The student loan program overall as well, which allows, enforcement, that's right, enforcement of civil rights. And there's a lot of concerns about enforcement of civil rights on college campuses. The entity that enforces those civil rights is the OCR inside the U.S. Department of Education, which has now been dismantled temporarily by Trump and Musk.
Okay. Thank you both for coming. I appreciate that you both have been to town halls with AG Kris Mayes, as well as Representative Stanton. It's important that you are here to listen to your constituents and the public at large. There are a lot of red districts in this state that do not have this opportunity because they are not showing up. And I would recommend to adopt an LD or a CD and go in and talk to them. My name is Angela Buer. I have been a history professor for over 20 years. I've spent my career studying the power of historical movements, the fragility of freedoms, and the chilling rise and fall of fascism. But nothing has prepared me for the reality that's unfolding on our own campuses. Mahmoud Khalil, Rumiesa Öztürk, Alireza Darodi, who were student activists, not criminals, have been systematically targeted by ICE last month. Now, just this week, 8 ASU students had their visas revoked as well. Mahmoud, as an activist in the Columbia University protests, was ripped from his home and his pregnant American wife. Rumiesa is a doctoral student, was abducted in the street after her Ramadan fast, and then illegally transferred across state lines. Alireza is a PhD student in Alabama, is also in ICE custody. This is a modern-day Gestapo. A chilling echo of history's dark chapters playing out on college students who pay to get their education here. My own institutions here in Arizona are succumbing to tyranny. Timothy Snyder's first warning in his book on tyranny, any of you want to look that up and read it, the very first thing he says are do not obey in advance. This warning has been abandoned in Arizona. Colleagues are forced to erase pronouns and DEI programs from their websites, erasing the very identities of our students. Even convocations have been eliminated for Indigenous students. Fear now stalks our classrooms. The students rightfully are afraid of ICE and afraid of expressing their beliefs. The very foundations, like you have said, of our democracy are the First Amendment's guarantees of free speech, assembly, and religion. The Fifth and Sixth Amendment's promise of due process are being shredded. And these are not abstract concepts. These are the bedrock of our rights. This is not America I know. This is not the America that I teach about. This is a betrayal of the principles that we hold dear, and I refuse to be complicit. I refuse to return to a classroom where fear silences students, where protest is criminalized, and where our constitutional rights are treated as disposable. And we have to ask, what country are we living in? How do we reclaim the freedoms that are being stolen from us? And I really do appreciate you coming here to listen.
That's a very powerful statement. I do want to respond. I really appreciate your, first off, your commitment to teach in higher education is critically important. Students that are here, even foreign students that are here on student visas, that have not engaged in violence, not engaged in violating other students' civil rights by blocking their ability to get to class, but simply have expressed their particular viewpoint, should not have their visas revoked for that reason. That is wrong, and it sends all the wrong messages about American values to the world. Now, some of those students at ASU, because I represent ASU, we may be working with some of them, and so I can't talk about because they have student privacy rights and deal with the individual facts of those cases. So I want to leave it at that. But I will say something larger about what's going on in higher education in the United States of America. Because this president thinks he's a bully and can threaten universities by taking away their research dollars or other federal dollars, and we've seen it with some of the Ivy League institutions. We've seen it with higher education institutions around the United States of America. And it's a very difficult decision for each university. ASU, we love ASU. My son's going there next year as a freshman to ASU. A university that is ranked internationally as one of the top universities for sustainability and their green programs. Ask Lauren Kuby. She used to teach in that program, and it's a great program of sustainability at ASU. And now they want to defund universities because of their support for these very same programs. ASU rightfully brags about its diversity programs and the success that they've had, especially with our Latino community, in becoming one of the largest, maybe the largest Hispanic serving institution for our Latino students. They shouldn't retreat from that. They should be bragging. Threats to their bottom line. But instead of giving into it, lock arms with every other university around the United States of America and say, if you're coming for one of us, you're coming for all of us, and then see what the bully does. And in a similar vein, one of the reasons why what the AGs are doing is so important is because it is breaking my heart like it's breaking every single person's heart in this room to see the largest and most powerful law firms in the United States of America cut a deal to save their, because of bullying, saying that their clients won't be able to get any government contracts because some lawyer at the firm did a pro bono case 4 or 5 years ago that the president doesn't like. That's authoritarianism. And with all due respect, if you follow this issue, you know exactly what I'm about to say. We need more Perkins Coies and less Paul Weiss's. Perkins Coie is standing up and fighting this administration and their attempt. We need more courage in that regard, exactly as the AG talked about.
Hi, I agree with everything you said. But I'm here to focus tonight on the Trump-Musk unlawful actions aimed at the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, formed in 1932 and affiliated with the AFL-CIO. This goes back, Franklin Roosevelt stated that it is now beyond partisan controversy, that it is a fundamental individual right of a worker to bargain collectively with his employer. Public sector unions have consistently been a bipartisan fact and now provide over 800,000 employees with representation in nearly every federal agency, ranging from nurses, social security professionals, park rangers, and unlike private sector unions, AFGE members are already prohibited from striking, and as you know, Congressman, their salaries are set by you in Congress. Nonetheless, AFGE works to ensure civil servants are treated with dignity, fairness, and respect until March 28th, when Donald Trump signed an executive order to unilaterally end collective bargaining with federal unions in what he called agencies with national security missions. Now, this is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the public sector. This is an affront to the dedicated employees in the his sole purpose is to demoralize individuals who've dedicated their professional careers to civil service, who are helping those in need and sharing their expertise. Now, what he calls an employee in the national security mission, he includes employees who are providing hands-on health care to veterans. Now, how that is a national security issue, I don't know. Individuals who are working to mitigate pollution, and individuals such as my son, who is officiating at a naturalization ceremony tomorrow morning at the Sandra Day O'Connor building here in Phoenix. He is a immigration service officer. This executive order is misguided and, as you know, violates existing legal agreements. I believe that the reason he issued this executive order is the very fact that AFGE has been speaking out against the DOJ slash and burn and cuts where they are cutting people and then realizing, oh my God, we cut someone who is in charge of nuclear arms. Right. Whoops, maybe we shouldn't have done that. So thank you for your support, and thank you for support of the AFGE.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, and I just think that goes to the heart of several of the lawsuits that we have filed to protect federal workers, and I think Greg can probably speak to the maybe to the union piece of this, but that's probably, I think that is one where we've got the unions doing that particular lawsuit on bargaining. But I want to use this as an opportunity to say this to you. I believe that the attempt to essentially destroy our federal agencies is going to get much, much worse in the next couple of weeks. And I think that we all need to brace for this. I want you to know that the Democratic AGs are preparing for it. We will be ready for it. If they do what we think they are going to do, essentially it will look a lot like what they tried to do with the Department of Education and what they tried to do with 7 small agencies that they essentially are attempting to completely destroy. So I just want you to know that it is going to become it's going to get much worse. They're doing it, we believe, as sort of, as Greg mentioned, as pay-fors for the tax cut for the billionaires. But we have a huge fight on our hands. We have a huge fight on our hands to protect people who are fantastic public servants. You mentioned the Veterans Administration and veterans. We've had folks come to our town halls, the AG's town halls, who are veterans, who stood up and said, you know, here in Phoenix, a woman stood up and said, I provide music therapy for 80 veterans, and I was just fired. And those 80 veterans who are suffering from PTSD aren't getting their music therapy. We had a woman in Minneapolis stand up and say, she actually brought with her, she's a veteran herself working for the VA, and had been fired, got the fork in the road email, and she held up the IED that exploded next to her and that gave her a traumatic brain injury, and she is serving the people of this country, and she got fired by Elon Musk. And so that is the level of cruelty that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are engaged in, and that we are fighting back against. But I just wanted to mention that to you because I do believe it's going to get worse.
And the only thing I'd add to that is a collective bargaining agreement is a contract, and you cannot unilaterally end the contract or breach the contract. And so, yes, Trump believes that, as you know, Congress is the Article 1 entity in our United States government. The president is Article 2. He believes his Article 2 powers allows him to fire anyone at any time for any reason that is in the executive branch. He's wrong. You don't get to violate a collective bargaining agreement. You can negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, and that's perfectly fine. That's what labor union management negotiations are all about. You don't get to violate the civil service protections. There's a process there for a reason, because we want people, the most talented people, to enter public service. They don't earn as much money as they can elsewhere, and so civil service is one of the reasons why they do it. But if the president was concerned about the morale of people in the national security arena, if you're actually a national security professional who is taking care, your career is about protecting the national security of the United States of America, you're going to be much more concerned about the leaders of national security putting out top secret attack plans on Signal, a commercially available app, putting our service members at risk of dying who are engaged in those attack plans, because we know China and Russia picked up those attack plans the moment they put them out on Signal. Maybe they should be a little more worried about that as it relates to the morale of those employees.
Thank you. My name is Travis, and I'm encouraged by the fact that lawsuits are being filed and won. But being a retired federal law enforcement officer for 25 years, my questions are very simple. If you don't have an enforcement agency, my agency is being decimated. And my concern is now that with Pam Bondi in charge of all of the enforcement agencies of the United States, including the Marshal Service, who oversees the enforcement of the courts, has there been any consideration of how the government's going to address that if my agency and the other agencies don't enforce the law or opt not to enforce the law because the agency heads are telling them not to enforce the law?
Yeah, let me take that. So, this you're not the first to ask this question, and it's an incredibly important question, and it's almost surreal that you even have to ask it, and I even have to answer it. But it is an incredibly important question, and it look, here's the deal. At some point soon, the United States Supreme Court is going to have to decide whether it still believes in America, whether it still believes in the Constitution, and whether it still believes in the separation of powers. And then, I think your question goes to what happens after Donald Trump potentially blows past a decision that they make in my favor, in the AG's favor, in these lawsuits. And your question goes to the fact that the U.S. Marshals would be the ones who would enforce a decision on behalf of the United States Supreme Court, or for that matter, a federal judge, right? So let's say it's still at the district court level. And we've already seen Donald Trump, as I mentioned, blow past several decisions. Now, I will say the good news on that front is whenever we as AGs have had to file what's called a motion to compel, they generally do follow, finally, the motion to compel. And you got to remember that, and Greg and I are both lawyers. These lawyers working for Donald Trump have to worry about their bar licenses, right? So
Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, right. So you know, they've got to think about that. They've got to think about their futures and their future careers. So it is an incredibly important question. Listen, I will tell you this, that the Democratic AGs, and we meet, by the way, together by Zoom, all 23 of us, almost every day. We meet almost every day. And we talk about the litigation that we have going on. We talk about the cases that we are going to do next. We talk about which states are going to take a lead role in those cases, you know, and we talk about issues like the one you just raised. So I want you to know that we're thinking about it and we're going to have a plan. We're going to have a plan.
And an important lesson the Trump team needs to understand is that when you make a decision that overreaches your power and the AG sue you and you lose, the right thing to do is not to threaten to impeach the judge. Go ahead and appeal the decision. Give it another shot at the higher level of court. That's American jurisprudence. But what they're doing right now is blatant bullying and intimidation by openly encouraging impeachment of judges simply because they enforce the rule of law and they don't like the decision. That's un-American.
First of all, thank you both for being here. I think it's really important. And this is me having courage. This is... My name is Donna Gifford, and this is a personal question, personal to my family. My daughter is on furlough right now and is expecting to lose her job completely pretty soon. Her job was to work directly with USAID. Her job was with an engineering company. She was doing important work all over the country, all over the world, I should say world. With the decimation of the entire aid section, I would like to know if you think we can ever recover from the loss of soft diplomacy.
For everyone who is cheering on the illegal decimation of USAID, whether you liked every single program or not, but the concept that the United States needs to be active around the globe, and that's how we maintain our strength. Our economic strength is directly related to our ability to show support for people around the globe during their worst of times, whether it be weather emergencies or other things that are happening. Myanmar and Thailand just suffered from a horrific earthquake, and we're not there. The United States has always been there. And you know who's there? China. China right now, sadly and tragically, is filling the gap. Everywhere USAID and the United States has retreated from, China is filling the gap. And if we want to maintain the strongest economy on planet Earth, we also have to have, we need to have the strongest military on planet Earth, and we need to have the strongest alliances on planet Earth. And that includes support for countries around the globe on all continents through USAID. So the decimation of USAID, if you support the United States being the strongest country in the world, I do, that's one of the most self-defeating things we could have done, and we have no choice. We have no choice. Once we have new leadership in the White House, to rebuild our system of alliances, was just being destroyed right now through these tariffs, as well as the USAID. We have no choice but to reestablish one of our greatest strengths, which is strong soft power. By the way, I don't know if she came in late or not, or just hiding behind that door, but Councilwoman Jen Duff from Mesa's back there. I see you. Thank you, Jen Duff, for your service.
And we're going to take the next question right back here.
Hi, I'm a mental health counselor in the area, and I'm sure no one is surprised, but all my clients are extremely anxious and helpless and hopeless right now. And as like one of your missions here in terms of the crowd piece, something that you encouraged for us, I'm curious, what would you actually encourage we do on a day-to-day basis? These people that surrounded here today, because genuinely, there's a lot of research about how the way to help with helplessness and hopelessness is by moving with your body, not just using your voice, but being able to do something. And it's really hard to organize around that when not necessarily a leader is telling us some good direction. And I'm curious if you have any good direction that crowds can do with their physical bodies on a day-to-day basis.
Great question. Greg probably has some great ideas. Look, what I would say is, I think the momentum that we're seeing, just a crowd like this coming out to events like this, April 5th on, I think is it Saturday? I'll be up at the protest in Sedona. So go to those. Go to every single thing you can get to, and if you can't get there, make phone calls. Go, call Juan Siscamani's office. Call David Schweikert's office. Call Eli Crane's office. Go protest outside their offices. And to someone else's point, you're damn right. I'm going to go do town halls in their districts. I'm going to go do town halls in their districts. And maybe Greg will come with me. But I just think any possible way you can make your voice heard, because the truth is that at some point, these Republicans that Greg is serving with are going to be forced to deal and reckon with the American people. And the other thing I'll say is, judges are human beings too. And though they are to only take the evidence into consideration, I'm a former corporation commissioner, which is a quasi-judicial position here in Arizona, and you do take into consideration how people feel. It is a human instinct. It is a human reaction. And so it's important. I just can't overemphasize the importance of this to all of it. I will keep fighting as your Attorney General, as will my 22 colleagues. Greg will keep fighting in Congress, but we need you beside us, continuing to show up all the way through 2026 and all the way through 2028.
I think the Attorney General said it well. You need to be active, involved, and have your voice heard. And people in your network of friends, you're not supposed to talk, I guess, politics or religion among friends. Well, maybe skip religion, but talk politics, because now is the time. And you'll find out, I think a lot of your friends that are independent, a lot of Republicans are really pissed off. They may not be pissed off about all of the issues that you're pissed off about, but these tariffs that are going to raise prices at the grocery store and on other products, the fact that their 401k is shrinking and they may have to actually work much longer than they were expecting to work. They thought they could retire, and if this keeps moving in this direction, we move towards a recession, they're going to be really pissed off as well. These Medicaid cuts, first and foremost, it's terrible for human beings' health and children's health, but it's really bad for business, because you know how many hospitals in this, healthcare is such a large part of our economy. Our hospitals, particularly rural hospitals that are going to go out of business, and by the way, when you cut Medicaid and rural hospitals go out of business, it doesn't just affect Medicaid patients. It affects every person living in that rural area. It is bad for business, and that people are going to be angry, whether Democrat, Republican, or independent, and that's who are, when the Attorney General mentioned, some of the Republicans that need to hear from us, but everybody, keep me accountable as well. That's what part of being in public leadership is all about. But when they are fearful of Donald Trump, they are so fearful that if they turn on him, that he is going to find someone to primary them in their next election. So that's their political calculus. And maybe it's time for the people of America to change that political calculus, that if you don't stand up to Donald Trump, you might lose your next election as well. And that's what your job is to do.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. I've followed your career since you've taken office, and I watched on the Congress Governor website, and so I watched your career. And Ms. Mays, thank you for coming out this evening. I'm sorry the governor could not be here as well. Everybody has spoken about their credentials. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. I have a master's in public administration, a master's in divinity, a master's in counseling, and I plan to pursue my doctorate next year. I entered China on the first anniversary at Tiananmen Square, and I taught English as a second language to high school teachers. I remember my great-great-great Aunt Taya, she was a blood relative in the late 60s, told me as when she was a young girl, the soldiers came around the big house and told them they could go live wherever they want. I'm speaking now as a member of a democratic republic. We have not addressed the $36 trillion in debt. We have not addressed all these phantom people receiving Social Security benefits. We have not addressed all the people who are getting Medicaid who have not built into this country. There are a lot of things that we are not addressing. So this is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democratic issue. This is an American issue. And I want to see you tucked away. And also, while I'm out, I've contacted in past. No one has said anything for the last year of the obvious mental decline of the past commander-in-chief. My question is, who ran this country? What was going on? Who was complicit behind the scenes? And we need accountability, just like all of these lawsuits that are being posed. We need accountability. What happened to this country with all these things that
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the question. This is a bipartisan crowd, and that's what makes America great. And this particular part of our community happens to be pretty bipartisan, which is great. So I appreciate you coming and expressing your First Amendment rights and all the issues that you brought up. I will politely disagree with you. The Social Security program is one of the greatest achievements in the United States in terms of our governmental systems. And I was personally at the joint address where the president tried to suggest that people who are 125 years old are receiving checks, or 150 years old and 200 years old. And that, I just have to be honest with you, that is complete misinformation. It's inaccurate, and that people believe that there is that level of fraud with it. Now, we should go after fraud. We have Inspector General. By the way, he fired all the Inspector Generals when he first got in office, which, if you really want to go after fraud in the government, we have Inspector Generals to go after. And whether it's Medicaid fraud or Social Security fraud or any other program, that should be aggressively pursued by law enforcement officers like our AG. But the idea that the Social Security system is overwhelmed by fraud is complete misinformation and does a disservice to the American people.
No prepared remarks, but I just want to make a couple quick points. Thank you so much for being here. It means a lot. I'm CD1. I've been calling Schweikert. He's chicken. He doesn't want to show up. His staff is scared. I wasn't paid to be here. I don't think anyone in here is. So I want to squash any rumors on anyone that's watching social media thinking that we've been paid to be here by Soros. I certainly haven't. I'm a United States Air Force vet. Was stationed in DM. Excuse me. Sure. My father fought in Vietnam. My grandfathers fought in World War II. My great uncle died dropping bombs on the Nazis and got a Purple Heart. So I'm grateful for my family. Your comment at the beginning, and there's so many great responses here. I just want to thank everyone who's had courage to come up, and I know there's so many hands. I don't want to be long-winded here. I just want to, it's not lost on me the comment that you made at the beginning, AG, about your thoughts as the serving Attorney General of Arizona concerned that we are in the middle of a coup. That's incredibly powerful in my mind. But sure, we watched it, and we've been watching it, and we saw January 6th. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much for your coordination with the other AGs. Thank you for the conversation or the communication about AG Bondi and her inability to follow the law as she should be. And then I guess my question ultimately, you mentioned courage, Congressman Stanton, 7 House members. I've seen 4 senators, McConnell, Paul, Murkowski, Collins, all kind of getting some courage. We've got amazing efforts to push back against this lawless administration from the work that you all are doing. I would love to hear your thoughts, Congressman, on this razor-thin margin in the House and Mike Johnson's ability to hide behind it. We've been down this road. We saw the impeachments. We saw the coup. We saw the stealing of classified documents, the obstruction of Congress to pursue those through one administration, not the other administration. We saw it through this sitting administration who is a citizen and would not give the documents back. We've seen it all. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on courage for these Republicans, where they're at, and is it really that they're worried about primaries, or are they complicit? I mean, it's baffling to me that we're
That's
here.
a fair question. And to be clear, you were not paid to be here. But we do have cookies and coffee if you like some afterwards. No one's getting them. They're right there. But no, thank you for being here. Look, what you just described, the situation we have in the House right now. There were elections on Tuesday, and so 2 additional Republicans were there. So the margin went from they could only lose 1, now they can lose 3. Otherwise, they will lose a vote, assuming the Democrats stay united. We don't stay united on every single issue, but generally we've been pretty united. This Congress has led to some crazy politics. Andy Biggs, who's never voted for a continuing resolution in his entire political career, a continuing resolution that would lead to a massive increase in the budget deficit, continuing the spending that he has railed against for so long. No way he's going to vote for the CR until Trump makes that call. And then he gets up and says, well, this time, because Trump promised he's going to make cuts later on, this time I'm voting for it. I mean, it's created some very strange situations. My point is, yes, I do believe that so many of the Republicans across the aisle really hate the situation that they are in. They have been free traders for their entire careers. That used to be, on the Republican side, the norm was to support free trade around the globe, and now they're being asked to support the largest tariffs in American history. I guess we'll all have to go back and read the history books about Smoot-Hawley and how they're bigger than Smoot-Hawley back in the day. You're too young to remember Smoot-Hawley. What are you but you get the point, and now they're supported. So the point I made, I just want to reiterate, which is the political equation now is, yes, they are afraid that if they take on Trump and then he threatens to primary them, that's the end of their political careers. And I think that is the motivating factor why people are going against their core values. And we as Americans have to change that political equation.
And as we go to the next question, I want to recognize we have Representative Lorena Austin in the room.
Oh, yeah. And one more, Kiana Sears, brand new to the state legislature. Kiana Sears,
okay,
thank you. Just appointed, good to see you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Perez, and I'm fairly new to everything political. I'm 36 years old, and I can admit that most of my life I had a very surface level understanding of politics until stuff started to really gain momentum and it started to become unavoidable. So I started to do a lot more research. So my question is, now that we see our president going on stage, on a world stage, and announcing, oh, a tariff, and then he's rolling it back, and you see the stock market is doing its thing, but it's impacting our relationships with our closest allies, and it's also impacting our business, right?
I guess I want to just pull back and ask on a state level, what can we do to protect our economy? Because Arizona's really popping when it comes to semiconductors, and we have a lot of great growth here. We're starting to really boom. What can we do to protect ourselves from the manipulation of what's happening, whether he's truly wanting to keep these tariffs in place or not? He's trying to manipulate the stock market, and it's messing up our business. And I'm wondering if there's any plans to do safeguards to try to protect our state economy.
All right, I'll jump in on that one. Look, at a time when we are in this economic competition with China, when so many American companies are pulling away from China, we want them to come back first to the United States of America, but if not to North America. We should be working more closely than ever with our next door neighbors, Canada and Mexico, to build the strongest economy possible. And our ability to win this economic battle involves our ability to build the strongest alliances around the globe. And if you want to deal with tariffs, let's do trade agreements. By the way, I was in Congress when Trump was first in there, and we did the USMCA, which was a great bipartisan achievement. And now he's blowing up the USMCA. I want to see a trade debate between Trump 45 and Trump 47. That'd be one hell of a trade debate about what the best trade policy is. By the way, that doesn't mean we don't have serious issues with Mexico. I got to be clear about that. Obviously, the border and border security is incredibly important. The fentanyl, which is crossed and the AG has worked so hard on, is fighting against the fentanyl that's come across the border. We need to do more to stop guns flowing from the United States into Mexico as well. And Mexico needs to do more to increase the energy market so that American companies are more willing and to take the chance to invest more in Mexico. But at the end of the day, a secure supply chain, particularly in semiconductor, as TSMC has recently announced $100 billion in additional. Trump ballyhooed that. He said the tariffs were the reason for that. Have you heard of the Chips and Science Act? Because we made the greatest investment in industrial policy in American history through the Chips and Science Act. That's what's driving semiconductor here, and we need a secure supply chain. Supply chain from China ain't secure from a national security perspective, but from a partner and friend like Mexico, it can be. So this demonization that we've seen is bad for American business, bad for our ability to compete internationally, and this AG said earlier about what we need to do, how our voice is heard, whether it be on civil rights policy that was mentioned earlier or economic policy. We need to get loud.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, I have two requests and a question. I am actually an independent who is strategically registered as a Republican because in Arizona I can't vote in a primary unless I ask for a ballot, and so I want to be able to weed out in certain types of characters when I vote in a primary, and so I'm strategically registered this way, and yet I stand by the Constitution, not by a political party. And so my two requests are, because I'm terribly frightened by what's happening and what Trump and Elon Musk and the Republicans who refuse to grow a backbone in Congress are doing to our country. I'm frightened. I genuinely am. And my request is that you make more noise, that you and Senator Kelly, Senator Gallego, and any other representatives from Arizona. I start my day reading AZ Central and the news over breakfast, and I finish it over dinner, and then I try to avoid it during the day so I don't doom scroll myself into a depression. But I would ask, I'm not seeing you, any of you on the front page. I want to see you more. I want to hear you more. I want to know all these things you're doing, and I want it broadcast loud and clear. My second request is a big step, and I understand that, but I'm still asking you to have the courage to bring forward a constitutional amendment to limit the terms of congressmen, because this should be an act of service, not a career in which people are afraid of being primaried. If you were there to serve for your limited 2 terms, just as the president is limited to 2 terms, hopefully more people would get done what's right for the country and not what's right for them personally. So My question was already asked, but I'm going to reiterate it because I need to know. I don't know what else to do. I feel helpless, and that doesn't feel good. Is it helpful for us to keep calling your office and sending emails so that you can tally mark what people are asking you to do or requesting to be followed through on? Is that helpful? Am I wasting my time? And is there anything else that we can be doing? Can I call Juan Ciscomani's office? He doesn't represent me in my district. So should I be calling them? I just need to know what to do.
Well, look, I hear you, and I'm doing everything I can to be as loud as I can and to talk about the lawsuits that we're doing every single time. That's why I do a press conference pretty much every time I file a lawsuit. We are doing these town halls for this very purpose because the AGs believe that this is about not just winning in court, which, by the way, we're winning in court, but it's also about winning hearts and minds across the country. And so this, you might have noticed, there's a lot of television cameras right here. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for coming out. And they're coming to all my other town halls they were in. And this guy right here was with me about 2 hours ago. So they were down in Tucson. And so you absolutely are right. You're absolutely right. And the AGs are doing everything we can. I am next week going to go to Oregon to join with the Oregon AG, Dan Rayfield, at a town hall up there in Portland. So we're doing them all over the country to make some noise, to talk about what we're doing. I don't know. Greg probably would be the best to answer your question about do the phone calls matter. I think they do. I think everything that you can do right now matters. Everything. And so for us, I think it's about me doing what I can, the power that I have to stop him for the next 2 years, and then we just got to flat out win some elections. We got to win some damn elections.
All right, I'm going to break through, I don't know if it's the third wall or the fourth wall, but I'm going to tell you the dirty secrets when you're in elected office, what we actually listen to and what we listen to a lot less. Number one, the best way to have your voice heard is when you personally show up at a meeting like this. This is the most impactful thing that you can do. When you physically take time out of your schedule, instead of watching White Lotus or whatever, be right here and engage in civic participation like this, that sends a strong message. So personal, physical, when you attend a city council meeting, I know the city council members and legislators that are here, when they hear from real people that show up. Second, well, I guess I'd also say when people see me in the grocery store, which is like all the time, and then a 5-minute trip to the grocery store ends up being an hour, I got to explain to my wife why the heck I'm so late, but it's because people want to talk politics these days, which is great. But secondarily, a personally written letter. An old-fashioned letter, not a form letter, but one that you have taken the time to actually put in your own words. I can tell you when I get my letters, and I have long flights back and forth to Washington, the personally written letters go to the top. Then I guess I'd put personally worded emails second to that, and then probably lower on the bottom, because a lot of the organizations are wonderful organizations, but they'll actually have form letters and you just sign your name or whatever. We get a ton of that. That helps, I mean, when you get the volume of it, but it's not, a human being didn't take the actual time. So we know if someone has invested in their time showing up or writing in like that, that is the one who rises on the top. Everybody, by the way, on the city council will know exactly what I'm about to say. Sometimes when there's like an issue in a community, there'll be 200 people in the community, and both sides will submit signature petitions, 150 each. And I'm like, that's 300. There's only 200 people living there. What happened? And I look, and some people signed on both petitions, both for the zoning case and against the zoning case. And sometimes I'll call them up. What happened? I'm like, well, they were so nice at my front door. I signed both. You know, what are you supposed to do? So petitions probably maybe have a little less impact. Personal involvement has the highest impact.
And if I could just say one last thing, one of the reasons that the AGs are doing town halls as well is to gather evidence. So the woman who talked about USAID, we are hearing things in all of our town halls that are new. So what I would ask of you, if you are seeing something, if you see an agency cut that you think that we don't know about, or an individual that's been harmed, or a thing that has happened that you think that the AGs could take on, please contact my office. And we've got the information probably up on one of these screens, because that's really, really important. And we have literally learned something new at every single one of the town halls that we've done that's actionable in court.
That's great. And by the way, someone asked, should you show up in somebody else's district? Sure, that's good. But it's even better if you figure out among your friends, family, coworkers who lives in that district and call them and tell them to show up so they actually get a constituent from their district. That's most powerful.
So first of all, thank you so much for giving me and giving us access to you. So appreciate that. My biggest fear listening to both of you tonight is I feel the over-reliance on that the system is going to work. So let me give a story about that. My name is George. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a current federal employee.
Thank you for your service.
Hopefully. So the lawsuit that you won where you brought the employees back, let me tell you what really happened with that. What really happened with that is they came back, they instantly got put on administrative leave, so they're not working for us, right? They're getting paid, but we're getting no benefit from them. They're going to be the first people that are gone in 4 weeks, right, when they do more RIFs, more reduction in force. And so it's that kind of thing, and it's like we see it in the news, like I've been hit over the head enough. The system doesn't work, right? So that's my fear. So can you talk about, my fear is the over-reliance on the system that isn't already working.
Yeah, I know. So, and we heard the same thing up in Minneapolis, where we had individuals come up and say, you know, we got riffed, and we had just won the TRO. We need to know that. I will say to you, though it's difficult, we're gonna win again. I mean, we're gonna win these lawsuits. And then it's going to come down to enforcement. So I hear your point about over-reliance on the system, but and there, listen, and I've had several of my colleagues talk about this, frankly, that there may come a point, and I don't know that we're at that point because we are winning in court. Okay, there may come a point where we are going to need national collective action. And I don't know what that looks like yet. But we've had it in the past in this country where we took to the streets and we had national collective action together. But, you know, for now, we have to continue to fight in the courts, continue to win. We have to win Congress so that Greg is in the majority, not in the minority. And then we have to win the next presidential election.
And I would just add to that saying it's not confidence in institutions per se. It's confidence ultimately in the American people. That if we go off in the wrong direction, and I think most Americans, even those that maybe thought that they were going to get lower costs or whatever by, voting for this administration, did not realize they were going to get an attempt at authoritarianism. That the American people are going to quickly realize that that was a mistake and redirect us in the right direction. That's going to be, as the Attorney General said, it's probably going to get more difficult before it gets better. And we understand what you're saying, that when the Attorney General wins her cases and the court has ordered that certain employees have to come back, but then the administration chooses to make life miserable in those positions, so people say, screw it, I'm quitting, or they get moved off to Siberia and not really able to do the job that they were hired. We get it. They could still screw with people even if they're technically reinstated, and that is incredibly demoralizing. And so we're in a really rough spot in the United States of America for a little while. But I believe we're Americans. We've been through rough times before in American history. And we're going to be judged in the future, as the Attorney General said at the beginning, about how we as Americans respond to this incredible challenge to the form of government that our founding fathers set up, whether we're willing to stand up and really fight for this, for our form of government. I believe in the American people, as you do.
Hi. 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 Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. I've been following you guys for a really long time. And I follow you guys online too. And don't be afraid of the haters. I appreciate the fight. And Kris, I appreciate, and please don't be hesitant when you say the word coup, because I don't think we're in the middle of coup. We are deep in it. This is fascism. And the only thing I would add to the reckless and dangerous and all of that, it is intentional. We have a lady back here that has a sign. Hold up the sign. We knew it was coming. We talked about it during the campaign. Project 2025 is out there. All you need, the playbook is there. They're following it. I don't know why everybody else isn't looking at it and getting ready for it, because it is out there, and that is what they are following. It is intentional. And the thing is, I saw this coming a long time ago, back in 2016. So, and I grew up in the Philadelphia, Jersey, Delaware area, listening to Trump on WMMR with Howard Stern. So I knew what a tool he was way back in the day. And I use that in every sense of the word. He's a tool in that he's an idiot, and he's a tool in that he can be used by other places in order to be used as a tool. In order to achieve certain goals. And as far as Elon goes, the thing is, the only thing that there's no such thing. You don't bring hackers to find waste and fraud, ma'am. You bring you bring accountants to find waste and fraud, and auditors. So that's not what's happening there. And Social Security is safe, and my mother happens to be scared to death that she's losing hers right now. And she also just got a letter for a buyout on her retirement. And they're offering her $7,000 for what she's supposed to be receiving $1,000 a month for the rest of her life. So these are very, very scary times. And I don't think we should be shy about what's happening here. And I think we need to make no mistake. Donald Trump was put into this position because of the Constitution, the reason he has the job that he has. Yet he is setting it on fire every chance that he gets. And we need to keep in mind that the very source that put him in the position that he is in is the thing that he is trampling on every single day. So we all need to think about that. That is the thing that gives him the power.
Thank you so much. That's great. I would just say, look, he did get elected president. There's no election denialism by me or anyone who kind of views the world that we do. There's no election. He won the presidency. He gets the power of the presidency. He ain't a king, though, and he wants to act like a king, and we're not going to allow him to do that. And you mentioned the word haters. I just want to make sure my view of the world, obviously if you're in public life, we're both in public life. Of course, when you post something on social media or do a press conference, you're going to have a lot of people that say nasty things and disagree. I don't consider them haters. Those are fellow Americans that disagree with our worldview, and that's okay. We're in the United States of America, and people have different viewpoints, and the political pendulum is going to swing back and forth. That's what happens in the United States of America. But you don't get to violate our Constitution. You can't go that far, and that's the problem that we have right now.
Hi, I am a poll worker here in Mesa. I have been, thank you. I recognize some faces, some folks I've spent some quality time with last election. I've been yelled at, cursed, called names. I've also been thanked and had my hand shaken. Yes, you're very welcome. Are there any others in the room? Say hi. Thank you. More than I fear whatever may come with this next election, I fear that there won't be one. The talk is there, and I want to know what we're doing to make sure that we can't see Trump declare a national emergency because he's jealous of Zelensky right now, that he's constitutionally prevented from having an election. He's mad that he doesn't have that ability, and I fully expect him to try it. So how are we going to stop that?
I think this is one of the reasons that our lawsuit against the executive order on elections is so important, because essentially it was his first step, and Adrian Fontes talks about this as well. It was Trump's first step to try to essentially seize control of state elections. One of the things in his executive order was that he wanted to cancel any votes that came in after Election Day. Now, in Arizona already, we have that policy, but many, many other states accept ballots that are postmarked before Election Day, right? So they wanted to do away with that. The Secretary of State is very concerned about the very issue that you raised. And what I would say is you will have Democratic attorneys general filing lawsuits against all of that if it happens. And again, it is going to come down. It is going to come down. As scary as this probably feels right now, given the composition of the United States Supreme Court, but I still believe in them. I do. It's going to come down to them. And then after that, all of us potentially. And so if that happens, we will fight it in court. We will take it to the United States Supreme Court, and then we will find out whether the United States Supreme Court believes in America. And I don't know what else to say. What if they don't is a question that is existential and that we don't know the answer to yet. But as I said, I believe that they do, and I believe that they will, and I believe that our country will hold. If it doesn't, we will have to together decide what to do about that next.
Hello, my name's Ben. I'm 20 years old. I voted in my first presidential election in November. I voted for Kris Mayes in 2022, and I was able to cure my ballot to help the 200-something votes. But as far as I can remember, I was in public school since kindergarten all the way up to the end of high school. As far as I can remember, in public schools, we've always been like, oh, we don't have funds to do this, we don't have funds to do that. I was in 7th grade when teachers went on strike, and Governor Doug Ducey did absolutely nothing. He gave them a 1% raise for teacher salaries, no funding for classrooms. I went to a Title I high school. I remember said we didn't have substitute teachers because we couldn't pay them, so we just sat outside on the floor. We were served, they couldn't order certain like lunch food or something on time, so we got 2 slices of bread and a slice of cheese for lunch. Our I'm more involved in like state legislator, so I'm a little nervous. Our state legislator does absolutely nothing to fund our public schools. I have tried reaching out to Abe Hamadeh. He's my current representative. He's a complete coward. He's as useful as a bag of potatoes. He is horrible. He doesn't respond. You did. Thank you. Yes. Sorry, I'll try to keep this short. But there's nothing that our state legislator is doing to fund public schools, while ESA vouchers currently eat away at public schools. I think it's near, I believe, $1 billion. And it just has no stop to it. Hobbs tries her best, but then that's where the federal government has to step in and help Arizona students. Since we are not in a majority, what can you, Attorney General Mays and Congressman Greg Stanton, do to help Arizona students when they need it the absolute most, when our state legislator does not care about our public schools?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So first of all, I would say the Democratic legislators in this room, like Lauren Kuby, Lorena Austin, Kiana Sears, and others, they are fighting for public education. They are fighting their hearts out, and I think we're going to put them in the majority too in 2026. If things keep going the way they're going now. But I am not the governor, although some accuse me of wanting to be. But I am the Attorney General, and I am doing everything I can to hold the ESA program accountable and to prosecute fraud in the ESA program. And there has been fraud. And so we have brought several cases against individuals who we have alleged engaged in fraud, just flat out fraud against the ESA program. I will continue to do that. I will continue to speak out. I will continue to warn parents that they lose critical federal rights when they take down ESAs that they have in the public school system, like FERPA. And so I'm just doing everything I can as the Attorney General of Arizona on that front. But you are flat out dead right about this. This is a scandal. The ESA program is a scandal, and it needs to be stopped.
Another thing I had on that is, look, one thing you can do when you're in public life is to use your bully pulpit. I've been in public life for a while, city council, mayor. I've been involved in every public education finance campaign the whole time. Before you were born, there was Prop 301 that was on the ballot, Prop 204, Prop 123, which I supported with Governor Ducey. It was very unpopular at the time. I was one of the few Democrats to step forward and support Prop 123. Thank God it passed. And now this governor is trying to get it reauthorized so we continue to fund public education, utilizing resources from the state trust fund to do that. I even supported Prop 208, which passed. If you remember that ballot initiative, it passed, and somehow the Arizona Supreme Court undid it. And so we didn't actually get the resources from the education initiative that passed. Education finance has been a battle, and it's going to continue to be a battle to support our public school teachers and education support professionals, including those that work in the cafeterias and those bus drivers that are really important in rural areas of Arizona. They deserve to be funded too. Some people in the legislature want to only fund teachers. We love our teachers, but you got to support all the system in order to make it work. And what's really going on with this U.S. Department of Education thing is if those that support what the president and Elon Musk are trying to do are sitting here and say, hey, don't worry. We get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, we'll just block grant it and send it all to Tom Horn here in the state of Arizona. The problem with that is now you're going to take federal dollars that were meant for kids in the highest income areas, those Title I schools, and they'll voucherize that money, and they'll turn it into vouchers to send kids to private school, and that ain't happening. We're going to fight like hell to make sure that doesn't happen.
Hi, my name is Lisa Maxura. I'm an LD9, of course, and I want to thank the representative for letting me rant at him for about 10 or 15 minutes a few weeks ago. He took it like a champ, and I appreciate that. I'd like to thank A.G. Mays for being, in the nicest possible way, the best badass that Arizona needs. We're behind you, girl. My question is specifically for the representative. We've seen some shaky leadership in the U.S. Congress, in the Senate more specifically. The House side seems to have their act together a little bit more. I don't know if it's because of Hakeem Jeffries, but can you speak to the shaky leadership of Senator Schumer and what your feelings are with regard to the next generation, the Cory Bookers of the world, the Cory Bookers, the Jasmine Crockett's, the AOCs. We don't always agree with, but I think they're also badasses, and I think we need to listen to them. I think they're more often right than wrong.
Okay, fair enough. If you're asking me to wade into the Senate leadership soap opera, not tonight. Look, on the continuing resolution, which just became such a important and high-profile issue, and on our side, we were able to hang together to oppose the continuing resolution. And by the way, normally I would support a continuing resolution. Normally, if you need to do short-term continuing resolutions while the bipartisan appropriation process goes on, okay, that's 30 days. Let's a short things the government doesn't shut down. That's usually a very smart thing. But a long-term continuing resolution, so we basically don't do any appropriations this year at all, without allowing us the opportunity to put in specific language, limiting the ability of the executive to take money for purposes that we appropriate for, use it for another purpose, which is illegal, to put that specifically into the ability to bypass that. Under those circumstances, there's no way, with the reality of what's happening with the president, there's no way I was going to vote to give him that unlimited power. And I do believe that, and I do believe the Senate made a significant mistake by not doing the same thing that we did on the House side. And the Republicans are in charge of the White House. They're in charge of the Senate. They're in charge by a little of the House of Representatives. They are in the majority. So I don't know how they were somehow thinking they were going to blame the Democrats that they weren't able to pass their continuing resolution. That's on them, not on us, and we weren't going to let them get away with it.
First of all, I would like to thank both of you with all my heart. You have represented us well, but I want to ask Greg, could you be a little bit more Cory Booker?
He seems pretty Cory Booker to me. I don't know.
I think so. I think he's.
Can you talk for 20 hours, or I don't know? Did they allow that in the House? I don't know.
You could do it, Greg. I know.
Now, I
Oh my God.
I do not want to correct the Attorney General. But she just said, can I speak for 20 hours? When earlier she whispered, hey, you got to keep your answers shorter, Greg. Yes.
I have a question for you that my husband wrote out for me because he's unable to be here tonight. Yesterday, the U.S. Senate passed a bill that effectively prevents President Trump's ability to control tariffs and gives the power back to Congress. But the House of Representatives devised a scheme to prevent this proposal, passed by the Senate yesterday, to ever be considered by the House by extending 1 day to a year's time. As a representative in Congress, please explain to us this whole process and how and why your colleagues in the House can get away with this trickery.
All right. Your husband is a very smart dude. He explained it, and that's very personal to me. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm on the Western Hemisphere Committee. I'm a leader in the House on trade issues, which means I was one of the 4 co-lead members of Congress to do exactly what the Senate did. We went first. We pushed forward with a bill. We submitted a bill that would end the emergency declaration by the president, thereby forcing a vote on the tariffs. By the way, those were on the original tariffs, 25% on Mexico and Canada, and under the federal rules, the declaration of federal emergency will last 15 days, and then it has to end. It has to come before Congress. And what they did was, in order to not have a vote on our bill to end it, was to do this legislative trick of saying the rest of the legislative term is, quote, 1 day for legislative. It was a dirty trick. I'm glad that the Senate did what they did in a bipartisan way. They got 3 Republican senators, 4. You're probably right. And so they got it through. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, you see, we ain't giving up. even if they did that ridiculous trick, we can still get it on the floor through the discharge petition. Under the House rules, we're going into arcane House rules, but what the hell, you asked. Under the House rules, if 218 members of Congress sign a petition to release a bill, it gets on the floor. So we're going to begin, we're going to hope we get 3 courageous Republicans to sign on the discharge petition. Very similar, I described what happened with regard to the bill to allow proxy voting for young parents, where a few came over to our side. If we can get them to come over on our side, just like 4 senators came on the right side, on the Senate side, we can get a discharge petition, and we can end these tariffs, which is the largest tax increase in American history.
Hello, my name is Zach. I guess this is more both a question and a statement at the same time. I appreciate Mr. Stanton, you in the House refusing to, the entire Democratic caucus refusing to pass the bill, the funding. And Madam Hayes, I really do appreciate you with all the lawsuits, going to court. I appreciate all of that. My question and my statement comes down to, as has been discussed earlier, the issues with Chuck Schumer and the problems in general with the Democratic leadership or the party as a whole. I have been a lifelong supporter ever since I've really been able to. And yet, I am still disappointed. There is so much chaos going on. The leadership has become ossified and not in a good way. We have far too many people who are career politicians who have been in there since they were my age, and I'm mid-20s, who have been in Washington far too long. And Chuck Schumer betrayed 340 million Americans, whether they were on his side or not. And now, even with the Republicans destroying everything, the Democrats will still have to win those votes. You have to hammer it home that this is the Republicans. This is them, this is them, this is not us. But this is also a chance for change. We cannot go back to the way it was before. Saying, go back to the status quo is the wrong message for anyone to send, because the status quo did not work for the majority of Americans. Most Americans couldn't survive on the status quo. If we go back to that, I guarantee you it's going to be more chaos, more vile and hatred and just chaos in general. This is the chance for real change, the most radical person we have is center left compared to Europe. Europe has social health care and cheap college, and they do it on a fraction of the GDP America does. This is our chance. This is a real chance to change the future as someone who is the generation that's going to inherit all of this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is a real chance to do it, and I get it. You got to get the votes. You got to get in power. But this can't be we're just going to keep floating on by. Everything's going to be just as it was before. No. You do that, I guarantee you're going to lose. And I don't want you to lose. The future's already scary enough. Please don't do that to us all.
I want to make sure we get some more questions in over here. But listen, can I just speak to you about this? First of all, run for office, please. You run for office also. You run for office. Okay. Listen, we need you. Your country is going to need you, and we need you not in 10 years. We need you now. We need you now. The second thing I want to say is, I'll be very candid with you. The Democratic attorneys general of this country were not happy with what the Senate did, okay? Because we're up here filing all these lawsuits, stopping this stuff in court, and then they just squandered away their opportunity to stop it in the Senate. And so I agree with you. We can't have that. We need backbone at every level of government. And let me just say this. I have had multiple reporters say to me in the last 2 months, Kris, don't you think you're making a mistake by filing all these lawsuits against Donald Trump? Because he won Arizona in he won, aren't you worried about your next election? You know what my answer is? I am not worried about my next election, and I'm not worried about retaliation. Because if all I ever do with the rest of my life is spend the next 2 years fighting for our Constitution and for you, then I'll be okay with that. And you're right, that is the problem, because there's too many people who are too comfy in the Senate to have that attitude.
All right, I'm worried about filing. I'm worried if you don't file the lawsuits. That's what I'm worried about. Let me say, the point is well made, but let me make a little bit of a counter argument in this regard. I serve in the United States Congress, and we have members as young as, I think 26 is our youngest member, and I think we go all the way up to Maxwell Frost, to like 26 or something. He's one of our best members, and we have members that I think maybe 80 is our oldest member. I'm kind of a middle-aged man. I'm in the middle right now. But I know you don't mean it this way. I know you don't mean it this way, because I know you're a respectful person, but we don't want to fall into ageism. Some of the smartest, most active members that are some of the toughest, that believe as strongly in those issues that you brought up, that I look to for leadership and I look to for their experience, and I go to them for guidance and mentorship, are our senior members in our both in our community and in the United States Congress. So I know what you're saying in terms of like, hey, we should be open-minded to always looking for positive change, but some of our toughest, most effective members happen to be some of our older members as well.
I had one quick thing to add about Social Security. Most of those claims are false for one simple reason. The Social Security system automatically cuts people off at 115 years of age. They have to provide proof of identity that they are still alive to continue receiving payments. I also have two pieces of information to help with what several people have asked about. What can we do? Well, one of those things, for those who would like to continue calling their representatives, there is a free app on both Apple and Android that is called 5 Calls. Makes it super simple. There is also another free app that is on both that is called Goods Unite Us. Goods Unite Us shows you a rating of campaign finance reform. The rating goes from -100 to +100. Anything below 0 helps keep dark money in politics. Anything above 0 helps toward campaign finance reform to get dark money out of politics. It also shows you what politicians that company has donated to on the top levels.
Thank you. That's a good point.
I'm going to go straight back. I'm going to hold the microphone.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to reiterate the gentleman's statement here about Social Security. My name is Woody Bekas. I am a Social Security employee here at the Mesa office.
Thank you.
And I am also local president of AFGE Local 3694, which we cover we represent all employees, Social Security employees in the state of Arizona, but one office, okay? So the gentleman is correct. And earlier, there was some statements made about Social Security fraud that's going on. All that you've been hearing is complete BS about the fraud, okay? About 15 years ago, in the Mesa office, the whole nation for Social Security, we embarked on a project called the Centenarian Project, to where we met face to face with all of the individuals who were receiving Social Security that were 100 years old and older. for me, I was the representative that went out in the Mesa district and interviewed every single person 100 years old and older. Okay? And we did that to prevent fraud. This administration's claims that hundreds of thousands of millions of people receiving Social Security, falsely receiving Social Security benefits is complete BS. We have systems. We have systems in place to where, just like the gentleman said, once they reach a certain age, a person's benefits are suspended, and they have to verify their ID. We have to make sure that they are alive and we are paying the right person. And also, Doe just claims that millions of people receiving, even up to 150 years old, are receiving benefits. That's sort of what he's talking about is there are deceased individuals' Social Security numbers are basically still active because they have disabled adult children who are receiving benefits on their record. Technically, we're not paying a deceased person. We're paying their disabled adult children's benefits who are entitled to these benefits. So those Social Security numbers are quote unquote active, but they will drop off when the disabled child, no longer gets married or drops off the system, dies or everything. But it just appalls me with all of this false information, all of this BS rhetoric that is being pushed by the current administration. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you, everyone, for coming in, and and I do wanted to stress that. So
Could I just on this point? I want to. We are very worried. The AGs are worried about what Doge and Trump plan to do with Social Security. And so we have set up a web page on my website at azag.gov for anyone to report any disturbances at all to your Social Security checks. So if you or a loved one has even a day of disturbance, we want to know about it. We know that they have announced that they're going to shut down offices and shutter some offices. We also know that they intend to try to make some people now, when you first get Social Security, go in person to an office, which, as you can imagine, if you're disabled or you're elderly, maybe you can't go in person to an office, all in an effort to try to hobble Social Security. So the AGs are looking for potential injury to the state of Arizona, for damage. One of the last things I want to say about this is, when I file a lawsuit, I've got to show standing on behalf of the state of Arizona, and that means direct injury to the state or to Arizonans. And so that's why I'm asking you to be my eyes and ears on the ground on Social Security.
Hello, Greg. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to have to quit meeting like this. It was just a couple of weeks ago, we were on a picket line with a couple hundred letter carriers. People talk about the post office being shut down. An old disabled vet like myself, I get my medication through the mail. Can I be personal for a moment? I come tonight, Greg, to tell you I changed my name. I am nobody. I'm represented by nobody. I represent nobody. I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife, who are both on Social Security. And the question I have is, anybody in this room can really justify how a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, can tell me that my little over $2,000 a month is a Ponzi scheme? That's my case. But seriously, Greg, I want to turn your attention back to the VA. The VA is under attack like I've never seen it before. I remember when we came home from Vietnam, there was rats in the hospitals, no telephones in the rooms. I remember when the Communication Workers of America put the red phones in the hospital rooms over on 7th Street in Indian School. You want to talk about violating collective bargaining agreements? Do you really want to have this fight, Mr. Trump? Do you want to fight all of these veterans? It doesn't make any difference if they're R or D. Do you want to have this fight? If you do, we have spoken in this room tonight about what to do. And Congressman, you remember a man by the name of John Lewis who taught us all it's okay to create good trouble. Good trouble. And I'm here tonight to just food for thought, Greg, just food for thought. And I can call you Greg because we've known each other a long time.
Long time.
Long time. He was just a kid. Anyway, there was a U.S. Senator in this state by the name of John Kyle. And it was the same battle over and over about Medicare, Medicaid. And he would not come back to Arizona to hold a town hall meeting. That's all we asked him to do. Now, I'm not advocating anybody do anything. Like I told you, my name is nobody. I represent nobody. But if you want to have some good trouble, you want to take over I shouldn't say take over. If you want to visit your representative, which you have the right to do under our Constitution, go over to his office, walk in, and politely sit down till he comes back. If you remember the student sit-ins across the country, this is not rocket science, folks. We can do this. And I was getting discouraged, and I was getting a little aggravated and maybe tired, and an African-American woman, a deep, deep faith, looked at me and she said, Ted, this too shall pass. The question of how it passes is up to us. I was paid to be here, Greg. You owe me 37 cents.
All right, brother. I owe you a lot more than that. A lot more than that. You know, one of the funniest things about these members of Congress who think that DOGE is uncovering some big secrets, we receive, like monthly, the reports from the General Accounting Office, which audits every single one of these departments, and they actually make recommendations on changes or even programs that they think should be eliminated. Read the reports and take action on it. They act like DOGE is coming up with this magical information. But the American people are really smart. When it comes to Social Security, they know exactly where this is going. When you shut down these offices so that people can't have convenient access if they have questions or need help or have a customer service issue, when you shut down those phone lines so people can't call in and make an application to apply, or if they have to change to a different bank or whatever, to make the customer service aspect as difficult as possible, when you shut down offices in rural America and rural Arizona, and then demand that people who want to apply for the benefits that they've earned have to show up in person and make it as difficult as possible for people to apply for their earned benefits, we know which way the wind is blowing. And it ain't on the way that the American people are going to be demanding. And my friends in Congress think that they're outsmarting us. They don't want to make, hey, you want to make these cuts? Come to Congress, make your case. If you want to cut Social Security, bring it to Congress, let's have a vote. We know which way that vote would go. It would be overwhelmingly not in that favor. So they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to go to their conservative clubs and high-five each other and look at DOGE taking a chainsaw to the services that government provided. Look how great DOGE is doing. And then when they come to crowds like this, a more bipartisan crowd, oh, it wasn't me. That was DOGE that did it. It wasn't me. They think the American people are not smart. They're smart. They know. Talk about that's a Ponzi scheme to try to pull that off. The American people are smart and ain't going to fall for it. If Congress members, you are going to have to defend what DOGE is doing if you want to take credit for cutting all these programs, and you are going to face the voters at the ballot box. Whether you do a town hall or not, you're going to face the voters at the ballot box, and it's not going to be a pleasant experience for them.
Hello, thank you so much for having us here. Thank you so much for your leadership. My question is about something that's really keeping me up at night. It's about the Venezuelan migrants that have been deported to Gulag, a death camp, a terrible prison in El Salvador without due process. It came out on Monday in a court case that they admitted that at least one of the men, named Kilmer, who was married to a U.S. citizen, that was sent there for administrative error, and I can only imagine how many are there that are innocent, that went there based on tattoos. One went there, he had an autism tattoo, another one was a Real Madrid tattoo, and it just really breaks my heart to think of all these people that left their country for violence, that we were complicit in sending them there, and we're just going to let them die there as young, all men, because they sent women there too and they got sent back, but young men are going to die there, and we're not going to do anything about it. I get the impression, Greg, that a lot of Congress people are afraid to speak up about this for whatever reason. So if you can shed light on why there isn't more outrage that there was no due process. If these men are gang members, let their victims see their faces. If they are innocent, let them go free and have asylum here in the United States. And to Kris Mayes, is there anything that we can do for ICE to reel them in? I know a lot of immigrants and a lot of brown people are afraid to go to protest. They're afraid to do anything because of this intense watch.
Okay, so the president is utilizing a law called the Alien Enemies Act, which is meant to be a law when we're at war with another country. The people in this room know the tragic history of the misuse of the Alien Enemies Act. It's why we interned American Japanese citizens during World War II, based upon stereotypes that they were somehow going to be sympathetic to our enemy during that war. Thank God, the courts are working where they are demanding that those people who were inappropriately deported using the Alien Enemies Act that had nothing to do with any gang activity. In one case recently, they required the feds to pay for the plane ticket back to their community of origin. But yes, the Alien Enemies Act against a country that we're not at war with is something that is very, very problematic. And if people are being caught up in that who are not involved in any gang activity, that's wrong and needs to be rectified.
Yeah, I would just add to that. So, and I think, as Greg said, that the judge in that case has been very forward-leaning, and it's a case that was brought by other groups and individuals. A couple of things that are related to that, though, that we've done out of our office is we began hearing, a couple months ago from school districts that are very worried about ICE coming to schools and essentially nabbing kids out of school. And so we provided essentially guidance to our school districts and our school superintendents on what they do and don't have to do if ICE comes to school. So you imagine if you've got a secretary sitting at the front desk of a school and ICE comes to the school, or a bus driver who is confronted by ICE who wants to take a child off of a bus. These are the kinds of scenarios that literally our schools are having to address. And what we advise the schools essentially is that they do not have to allow ICE into the school without a full judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is not adequate. And so those are the kinds of practical things that because the same kinds of concerns we're seeing in terms of intimidation we're seeing in schools where, attendance rates seem to be falling a little bit, and school districts are very, very worried about that.
Well, I want to thank both of you for representing us and for speaking up for the good will of all of the people. I want all this to say that the most disappointing and disgusting meeting of all the Republicans when Trump and Vance met with Zelensky from Ukraine, and they bullied him and spoke out against, our prior good support for Ukraine. And I was wondering what is happening now to that support for Ukraine, given the pressure from other elements, financial elements within the government. Could you answer for that?
As you know, after the tragic and illegal invasion of Ukraine, the violent invasion by Putin into Ukraine, the American people, Republican, Democrat, everyone, was fully supportive of supporting the people of Ukraine. And we showed that by passing the packages to support them so that they had the military support that they needed to repel that illegal invasion. And the Ukrainian people, it's been incredible, just incredibly awe-inspiring how hard that they have fought to protect their homeland, to protect their families. I personally am inspired. And I can tell you on my side of the aisle, that support has not waned a single bit. And it's unfortunate that because of misinformation, et cetera, that it has waned on the other side. And at this point, we are not able to pass an additional package of support for Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. And the president, obviously, in the middle of this tragic war, switched sides and is now kind of fully on the side of Putin and making the case that there should be an end to the war, but more on the terms of what Russia wants. And what we in Congress, at least on the Democratic side, and our European allies are rightfully concerned about is if you do an appeasement like that, Putin ain't stopping with Ukraine. And that puts our NATO partners, our NATO allies at risk. And this is why our European and NATO allies are so concerned about this change. By not supporting them, the terms of the end of the conflict are going to be more on what Putin wants than what the rest of the world should want. And we have to stand up to dictators like Vladimir Putin, who thinks that they can push around their allies and neighbors. And look, right now, just final point real quick, and that is, in the post-World War II time period, the United States working with our allies, creating both military allies and economic allies, has created a time of incredible peace on this globe. And that peace has been very profitable for the United States of America. It's one of the reasons why we have the strongest economy on planet Earth, is because of those systems of alliances. And this president believes that these other countries that we have alliances with are not worth it. That somehow that they are getting more out of it than we are getting out of it, and we ought to dismiss those alliances, including NATO. He's questioned our very NATO alliance, which has kept this globe so safe. And I'm very concerned that we're moving to a world in which this president thinks that there's only three important countries, the United States, China, and Russia, and somehow we're going to divide this up in terms of a sphere of influences and that sort of thing, and take us away from the value that we put on these alliances and partnerships that has brought peace to this globe. And I think his decision to flip sides on the people of Ukraine who have fought so valiantly is a very sad thing. Make no mistake, we said at the beginning of the Ukrainian war that China was watching closely how strong we were going to be in that regard, because they want to take over Taiwan. And we needed to show strength, that we are willing to stand up for people that are peace-loving fighters like the Ukrainian people that were fighting tyranny. And now that we flipped, China's still watching. And it sends all the wrong messages about our willingness to stand up and fight others that share our values on this globe. One more, I know, I think we both have to run. I got to put some kids to bed.
So I lost a bet. My wife said there was no way I was going to be able to stay quiet. She was right. First, whoever sent the notice about this meeting down to Yuma, if you're here, thank you so much. That's why I'm here.
Welcome.
Registered Republican for the same reason the lady over there was, because you have to be in order to vote in the primaries. Constitutional conservative. Your concern about people not liking it, you do what you think you need to do. Whether we like it, we don't like it, you do what you think you need to do. The president, his mouth's an embarrassment. If you want to have some fun, come down to Yuma, and our seasonal residents are there, because most of them are Canadians. Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun. Threatening military force against our allies, yeah. His mouth's an embarrassment, there's just no question. But what I want to ask you, his concepts, cutting government, I believe the government is way bloated and needs to be cut. Mr. Musk and his chainsaw, please put it away. The government needs to be cut. I hear a lot of, oh, we can't. My question is, how would you do it, sir? If you don't want Mr. Musk doing it, I get that. I don't like the way he's doing it. How would you do it, sir?
Okay, yeah, we also get the question, are Democrats really willing to take steps to save the federal government money? Our Republican friends like to claim that they're the ones who are willing to do it. Now, did we really save money when right now we're about to enter the extreme heat summer for this community? And how many people in this community rely on a program called LIHEAP, Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, to pay for air conditioning that is life-saving for many people? They didn't cut LIHEAP money. They just fired every single person that works on the program. So if someone is not receiving their support that they need, they may have other comorbidities, so it could be life-saving, there ain't nobody they can call to get the support they need. Is that really saving money? But you know what saved more money than anything we've done in decades in the United States of America over the last, that we did recently? We took on Big Pharma, and we said we're going to actually negotiate drug prices so that Big Pharma couldn't name its price. And it's going to save hundreds of billions of dollars in the Medicare program. So I appreciate what you're saying. That's a fair point. But I would say look at who has actually taken steps to save government money and to reduce the deficit, and then look at the plan that's on the table right now, which is going to explode the deficit. I might say the stereotypes of the two parties maybe are incorrect, to be perfectly honest. Okay.
So first of all, we'll be doing a town hall in Yuma, so hope you'll come. I think next month, Sophia, is it next month? Please come to that one. Second, you're absolutely right. We need more efficiency, but AG's offices across the country have something called Medicaid fraud units, for instance. So this is one way that we fight against fraud and waste and abuse. We prosecute it. I have prosecuted more than 100 cases of Medicaid fraud already out of our office, out of the AG's office. And so there's a right way to go about this, right? You're absolutely right. And there's a wrong way to go about it. And the last thing I'll say is we can't fight inefficiency and fraud if we don't have a country anymore. So that's where we're starting from, and then we get after what you're talking about. But thank you for being a Republican here, and thank you. I know we got others. Thank you for speaking out, because there are a lot of you out there, I know, and so it's just incredibly important. This is a bipartisan effort.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. All right, let's give a big round of applause to Attorney General Mays for coming out to Mesa and Congressional District 4. What a great town hall. And this ain't the last one. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. It was very, very helpful and informative. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.